Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today's Scrum Pulse. I'm Lindsay Vellicina with Scrum.org, and I will be your moderator today. And today we have professional Scrum trainer Mary Iqbal with us. She is going to be presenting the characteristics of a great product owner. Looking forward to this topic. So next slide, please, Mary. So your microphones will be muted throughout the session. However, we highly encourage that you ask questions. So please submit your questions through the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And I will be fielding those throughout the session, and we will have Q&A at the end of the session as well. So please keep those coming, and any questions that we don't get to, Mary will address offline in some format. And then the session is also being recorded. So you will receive a link that will send you to our webcasts page, and you will be able to access the recording along with the slides after this session. Next slide. Okay, just a little bit about Scrum.org. We were founded by Ken Schwaber, the co-creator of Scrum, back in 2009. Our mission is to help people and teams solve complex problems. We have a global reach, and we really focus on being consistent with our training. We offer training and certification and professional Scrum. And we also have a lot of free learning opportunities available at your fingertips on our website. And this webinar is just an example of some of the resources that you can access there. And we always encourage our students and anybody who just visits our site to continuously learn and grow. And I hope that this session plays a role in that. So with that, I will hand it over to Mary to introduce herself and kick us off.
Hey, thank you, Lindsay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Iqbal, and I'm thrilled to be here today to talk to you about the characteristics of a great product owner. For those of you who don't know me, I have experience as an Agile Transformation Manager for over 60 Agile teams. And of course, I'm also a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org and the founder of Rebel Scrum, which is available at rebelscrum.site. I've trained over 1,000 people in Agile frameworks, and I'm passionate about using Agile and specifically using Scrum as it's designed so that you get the maximum benefits out of your application of Scrum. In addition, I have over 20 years of program management. Whenever I have a difficult initiative, a tough project to deliver, I've turned to Scrum. I'm currently interested most particularly in forming product teams, and I am very passionate about that being a fantastic way to deliver value to your organization. So without further ado, I want to dive into it. The purpose of today's discussion is to talk about the characteristics of a great product owner. But before we get there, I just want to just give a very brief overview. So Scrum includes 3 accountabilities. The product owner accountability is primarily responsible for maximizing the value of the product by managing the content and order of items in the product backlog. The Scrum Master is the second accountability in Scrum, and they are accountable for improving the application of Scrum. They're a coach for the team. They help improve the way the organization uses Scrum and the way individuals interact with the Scrum team and the way individuals within the Scrum team interact with each other. Developers, that's funny, I've actually switched the description in the slide. Developers are accountable for delivering a valuable increment of product every sprint, right? They do the work of the Scrum team. So the word developer can be confusing for those who are new to Scrum. Individuals who are new to Scrum may believe or may think that the word developer means that you need to be a software developer to be on a Scrum team, but this is actually not the case. Developer just means that the individuals are responsible for doing the work of the team. So Scrum and many other Agile frameworks sort of grew up in software development, but that word is actually meant to be inclusionary. So if you do the work of the Scrum team, if you're an individual who is delivering value by working on the increment of done product every sprint as part of a Scrum team, then you are a developer. So today's conversation is really about the product owner role. So I like to think of the product owner accountability. I like to think of the product owner accountability as the bridge between corporate strategy and the Scrum team. The product owner is accountable for maximizing the value of the product. And the way they do that is by creating product goal, creating a product backlog, which is really the to-do list of the team, and working with stakeholders across the organization, with their customers, and with their developers to figure out what are the things that are going to deliver value to my product. How can I maximize the value of that product? So they are the bridge, right, between the Scrum team. They're the ones who decide what the Scrum team is working on. They create, as I said, right, the product goal, the product vision. They create a forecast, which determines or which describes what the Scrum team is going to work on next. And they also create that product backlog. So some of the things that the product owners, that really all product owners are accountable for, is maximizing value, expressing and creating the content and ordering of the product backlog. They're one person, not a committee, right? We need one person pointing the ship in the right direction, right? A ship without a rudder doesn't go anywhere. So the product owner is giving those individuals on the Scrum team the direction by creating that content and ordering of items on the product backlog. Product owner is accountable for stakeholder management, but they're not the only one who does stakeholder management, right? The whole Scrum team can help with stakeholder management. The product owner creates a forecast, which talks about where the team will be going next. And they also decide when individuals or when we will release work to the customer. So there's a lot of things that the product owner does. So I'd like to ask you guys, before we get into the characteristics of a great product owner, I want to ask you all, which of these do you think is actually most important? So we're going to bring up a poll and ask for your opinion, right? It's going to be a little bit of an interactive course. What do you think?
Okay. Looks like these are coming in. There's lots of choices for people to read through. While we wait for this, Mary, there's an interesting intro question that came in here that others might be in a similar situation, if you don't mind me asking it.
Absolutely.
So this question that came in, there are so many different interpretations on product manager versus product owner. I'm currently being asked to be a product manager in a Scrum team. However, one day the product manager and product owner role may merge. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, great question. So Scrum describes the three accountabilities of product owner, right? Scrum master and developer. So as you know, right, product manager is not something that's described by Scrum. So as you mentioned, there's a lot of interpretations for what that means. Most of the time when I encounter a product manager role, it's usually somebody to whom product owners report. So it's usually somebody that is doing people management. It's not usually an individual who's directly responsible for the content and ordering of the product backlog. Is that your situation? So if those roles merge, it'd be a question of whether you could handle both of those at the same time, right?
Right.
So the product owner to the next question, right? The question was the next question that came through was, I believe the product owner defines the priorities, but the full squad defines the when. Am I wrong? So the product owner orders that product backlog, and then developers are responsible for estimating, right? Estimating work. And the product owner works together with his or her team to put together a forecast based on how quickly work is being provided to the organization, and based on the estimates in the product backlog and or the size, right? Sizing estimates or really just flow metrics. But she works together with their team to put together that forecast. So the product owner is accountable for the forecast, but they may work with their team to make sure that it is a reliable forecast.
Right.
There's lots of ways to forecast, right? You can use flow metrics, you can use points, you can use hours, lots of different options there. But generally speaking, the product owner is accountable for creating that forecast, although they may work with their team to make sure that it's a reliable forecast.
Okay, thank you, Mary. All right, I think we're ready to share our poll results. There we go. Okay. value maximizer.
All right. Yeah. So the number one voted accountability for the product owner was maximizes the value of the product. I agree, right? I think that's their main reason for being there. Then I think our number two on this list was, kind of scanning through the numbers, creates product vision and goal. I agree. Fantastic. All right. So let's get into just kind of reiterating a little bit about the product owner role. So they are responsible for representing the interests of the business or community through the content and ordering of the product backlog. They're deciding what it is the team's working on. They're not just deciding how much effort each item should take, because that's the responsibility of developers, but they are determining the order in which work will be done. They work with user groups to determine what features are needed and to release them. They may also work on non-functional requirements and making sure that those are ordered in the backlog. Things like upgrades. They're responsible for maximizing the value of the product, as we've already said, and the content and ordering of the product backlog. So that's just summarizing up. Now, there's many flavors of product ownership. So this information is taken from the Professional Scrum Product Owner course, which is available on Scrum.org. So I highly recommend, if you're interested in learning more about the product owner accountability, there's a further discussion of the product owner accountability in this class. But there are different types, levels, I would say, of product ownership. Generally speaking, like a scribe is a product owner who's just going out there and capturing requirements. A proxy is somebody who's likely to come from the technology scene, but they're more seen as a representative of the business. Then you have the business representative who has more direct authority, more domain knowledge, but has limited autonomy over the product. There's a sponsor who has the trust and mandate to make financial and product decisions. And then there's the entrepreneur who has complete responsibility over product management. So these different levels describe sort of I'm going to say the level of authority and the level of responsibility that the product owner has within an organization. Different organizations have different needs. Some organizations are not going to cede the authority for complete budget decisions to the product owner and IT strategy to the product owner, and some will. So this just describes the level of responsibility for the product owner, and also the level, it hints a little bit at the autonomy of that product owner. So I want to talk about some of the characteristics of great product owners. So I've worked with many product owners over the years, trained a lot of people, worked with a lot of different organizations, and I've put together this list of what takes a product owner from good to great, right? What are the characteristics of really great product owners out there? And I'm going to talk through each one of these and why I selected these as characteristics. So up until now, we've talked about what is the accountability of the product owner within the Scrum team. And now we're going to talk about what are some of the characteristics of really great product owners. The first one on my list is relevant business experience. So having business experience or business knowledge or business acumen is not something that's specifically called out in the Scrum guide. That's because it's not technically required for a product owner. But from my experience, the great product owners that I've worked with over the years have at least business knowledge or business experience in their particular industry. And when I say business, right, I'm not saying it can't be technical experience. It depends on your context. If your context is a software application, then it makes sense to have some relevant technology expertise in that area. But the great product owners that I've worked with understand what it is that their customer needs. They understand what it is that will help their customer. They have perspective on what it is that the customers are trying to solve. And they have the experience to be able to come up with solutions, come up with ideas that would actually add value to the product. So the greatest product owners that I've worked with have that background. Now, it's not to say that they don't brainstorm with their stakeholders. They absolutely brainstorm with their stakeholders. In fact, that's something I'll talk about a little bit later. And they also brainstorm really well with their development team, and they're open to getting ideas from others. But having this background and this context of what it is that my customer really needs is really helpful in judging the value of those ideas that are coming their way from stakeholders, from developers, from customers. That business experience, in my opinion, has great value to product owners in helping them make sure that the content and ordering of their product backlog is really adding value. And it has great value in being able to help those product owners craft a vision that is going to appeal to their customers, a vision that is going to bring value to the organization as a whole. So relevant business experience, relevant acumen, the ability to understand what is of actual value to my product, in my opinion, is really invaluable to the greatest product owners. It is something that you can grow. It's something that if you don't have experience in your particular context, you can learn, right? Work with those developers that are on your team, work with your stakeholders, get a feel for what your customers really need. And you can gain this experience on the job by monitoring, right? Monitoring your progress towards your vision and monitoring, okay, is my vision actually adding value to the organization? So coming up with metrics that really measure the success of your product and monitoring what impact are the changes that I am authorizing, the changes that I am prioritizing on the product backlog? What impact are those really having on my customer? So you can gain this. This is something that you can grow. And I think it's something that we as product owners really need to pay attention to and making sure that we're constantly asking the question, is this thing of real value? And then monitoring once these things are released to the customer, did it have the impact that I expected? So you can grow this over time. The next item that I've called out is incremental delivery requires right-sized stories. So focusing on incremental delivery. So what does that mean? I'm actually quite passionate about this. So Scrum and really all Agile frameworks rely upon this concept of frequent done product. So iterative, right? Iterative means delivering something frequently. Incremental means delivering something that is potentially releasable, that's usable to our customer. And the reason this matters for the product owner is you can't have incremental delivery if you don't have product backlog items that are written in such a way that each one provides value to the customer. So I've got a little graphic on the left-hand side of the image, or left-hand side of the slide, which I think really describes this well, right? Scrum teams and really every Agile team delivers value step by step, right? Incrementally. And each sprint should result in a done increment, which provides value to our customer. But if the product backlog has items in it which are not sized so that they can be delivered within this one sprint, it's really impossible for the Scrum team to deliver value incrementally. That's why it's so important that the product owner really have their eye on this ball, really make sure that the items in their product backlog are sized appropriately. Now, it's not the responsibility of the product owner to size product backlog items. That means the product owner needs to be working closely with the development team to get their input on items in their product backlog and to work with them to size them appropriately and get their opinions on, okay, is that really the most valuable thing to do next? So incremental delivery is my next characteristic of a product owner, not because the product owner is delivering that increment, but because the content and ordering of the product backlog has an incalculable impact on the ability of the team to deliver value incrementally. Many of the benefits of Scrum rely upon this concept, right? This ability to deliver value frequently to our customer, this ability to have transparency with our customer by delivering value frequently, the ability to deliver value sooner, the ability to reduce risk faster. All of those benefits of Scrum rely upon the ability of the team to deliver value incrementally. And the team cannot do this without a product backlog, which includes product backlog items that are sized appropriately and each one delivers value. That's why I say that this is something that's critical to a great product owner. If there were such a thing as a Scrum whisperer, they would always be whispering, what's the most valuable thing to do next, right? And that information of what's the most valuable thing to do next would be in the product backlog, and it would be sized appropriately. So I put this as my next characteristic of a great product owner. All product owners should be doing this, but the product owners who do this the best are great product owners.
We have a question that just came in.
Absolutely.
From Fabiana here. They ask, I struggle with quality levels when we speak about incremental. What are your thoughts there?
quality levels. I don't quite know what you mean. The quality of the items in the product backlog, like
I think what they mean is, what are your thoughts? Do you think quality diminishes when you deliver incrementally versus all at once?
Oh, I actually think
if
that
I interpreted that wrong, Fabiana, please clarify.
Okay. Well, actually, I think that quality levels increase when you deliver value this way.
Right.
Because if you think about it, right? If you're trying to test a huge deliverable that took months to work on, it's going to be a lot more difficult to test that whole thing, right? But if you're just trying to deliver something, or excuse me, to test something that's really the size of a bread box, right? Something that's a little bit smaller, that was just large enough to, just small enough to be delivered within one sprint, it's going to be a lot easier. And so actually a lot of research out there talks about the impact to quality of incremental delivery as being one of the unexpected benefits of delivering work this way. So actually, I would expect to see your quality increase greatly if you were to deliver value this way, because you're not trying to test the world, you're just trying to test the bread box.
Right. Thank you, Mary. And there's one more that came in that you might be able to answer relatively quickly. Can you expand on a few examples of ways to monitor progress?
So great question. In fact, we have an entire course on this topic. So there are 2 courses I would recommend that speak to this topic. First is Professional Agile Leadership Essentials, does speak to this topic. And then Professional Agile Leadership Evidence-Based Management is an entire one-day class that speaks about this topic and ways to address it. But in brief, if you want to measure, measurement is important, right? Measuring the success of the product is important. But I do want to start by saying the measurement, right, is just the beginning of a conversation. But if you want to measure the impact of the work that you're having on your customer, you need to think about, first of all, what is my product goal? What is my vision? What am I trying to achieve? And then work together with the developers to identify metrics that measure that. So very simplistically, right? If my goal is to increase sales, then obviously I need to be measuring things like shopping cart abandonment and sales, and potentially shopping cart size, or let's see, just basic traffic figures, or even things like where are my visitors coming from? Those sorts of metrics, they need to tie into your goal. Alternatively, if your goal is to improve the auto adjudication rate or quality, then you need to be measuring that. So it's important that what you're measuring ties back to your product goal. So I could speak a lot more about this, but I also recommend that you take a look at the Evidence-Based Management Guide, which is available at Scrum.org, which has some further discussion on this topic. But also feel free to reach out to me at mary@rebelscrum.com. I'd love to talk to you about this more.
Great, thanks, Mary.
Okay. All right, so I'll go then to the next characteristic of a great product owner, which is updates the product backlog frequently. So this again is another one of those things that all product owners are accountable for. All product owners are ultimately accountable for the content and ordering of the product backlog. While they may delegate this to individuals on the development team, they remain accountable. But I still call this out as a characteristic of a great product owner, because there's nothing worse than coming into the sprint planning meeting and the developers have gone in and done some research and they know what's coming up on the product backlog. And then all of a sudden we're pulling lower priority or lower ordered items and saying that we're going to do those next, right? So updates the product backlog frequently is one of those things that can be harder to stay on top of, especially for newer product owners. So I did identify this as one of the characteristics of a great product owner. Updating that product backlog, making sure that it's transparent, that it is ordered appropriately and shows what the Scrum team will work on next, is critically important to making sure that we're able to really live the principle, or live live empiricism, right? I was kind of struggling with how to say that, but making sure that we're really embodying the spirit of empiricism. Having a transparent backlog that shows currently, right, frequently, what the Scrum team is going to work on next is an invaluable tool to the Scrum team and impacts our ability to deliver value frequently and impacts our ability to embody the spirit of empiricism. Okay, my next characteristic is a benefit mindset. So what do I mean by that? So Scrum and really all Agile frameworks are focused on delivering value to the customer. And in order to do that, we need to be focused on the right mindset. So I've got on the screen 3 different sorts of mindsets that apply to really all members of a Scrum team, including the product owner. And all of us as humans do go back and forth between these. But the more that we can focus on what is the benefit that we're trying to provide to the customer, the better it is for the Scrum team, particularly for that product owner. So on the screen, you can see I've got a fixed mindset. That's someone who's comfortable with known structures, right? But a fixed mindset is someone who has trouble thinking more about growth. So an example of that is I have known no smart people who don't read books, but that's sort of a fixed mindset because there are plenty of smart people who don't read books. A growth mindset is someone who's really focused on embracing challenges, who's open to, hey, let's try new things, right? They're really focused on how do we grow? How do I grow my skills? And that's a great mindset. It's fantastic to have individuals with the growth mindset. But a benefit mindset is focused on why is it that we're doing what we're doing, right? It's not just about delivering something to the customer. It's about delivering something to the customer that meets a need, that adds value, that overall provides a benefit to our customer. So it's very important that product owners have this mindset of focusing what is of most benefit to our customers. So anytime you're working together with a team, working on the product backlog and ordering that product backlog or facing a difficult situation, it's important to take a moment and take a step back and think about what is it that we're trying to achieve? And is there a more efficient way to do that? So that benefit mindset is important to all individuals of a Scrum team, but is particularly important to the product owner. All right. So the next one is clearly articulates a product goal. So the product goal is part of the product backlog, and it describes really what is it, a concrete goal, right, overall that we're trying to achieve with all of those items in the product backlog. And a clearly articulated product goal provides a great deal of focus to the Scrum team. Now, not every single item on the product backlog will be in service of that product goal. You do still have maybe technical debt, or you do have other things that may be on the product backlog, but still, that product goal is overall the focus of the Scrum team. So great product goals are clear, right? They are inspiring, right? And they provide focus to that Scrum team and are something that clearly articulates what are we trying to achieve here and why are we trying to achieve it. So clearly the ability to clearly articulate that product goal and making sure that your customers, your developers, your stakeholders are aware of that product goal, talking about it, right? It's not just putting a product goal together, putting it on your footer maybe, and forgetting about it. That's something that needs to be brought up to be discussed at the sprint review, right? Start off every sprint review with, and our product goal is XYZ, and here's what we did this sprint to take a step in that direction. So creating that product goal, articulating that product goal, but also talking about it frequently, not just at the sprint review, but at stakeholder meetings, at refinement events, in all of the communications that go out to your stakeholders, maybe even to your customers, talking about, hey, our goal is this. And this is what we're doing to achieve it. And here's the things that we're measuring success for that product goal. So if you want to learn more about the product goal, I do recommend the evidence-based management class. It does talk about goals, and also the professional agile leadership class and the professional Scrum product owner all really talk about how do you articulate what is the importance of the goal. And the professional Scrum product owner class in particular talks about how to craft a great goal.
Mary, Nicole in our audience asked a question. She asked what an example of a quality product goal would be. Do you have an example that you could share?
A quality product goal. Okay. I take that to mean, right, that you're trying to improve the quality of your product, or are you trying to say a good quality product goal? I'm gonna
Do you
answer.
want to clarify that in the chat or something like that? You can give a moment.
But while we're waiting,
Okay.
A great product goal is really context specific. A great product goal really depends on your product. So for example, a great product goal may be to improve the auto adjudication rate of a claims processing system, or a product goal may be to launch a new product line by a certain date, or it may be something like, hey, we want to improve the quality of our product by reducing the number of production defects on the system. All of those things are great product goals. And the last one is specifically a goal really more related to quality. So it's context specific and it's strategic, something that is adding value to the customer, either by reducing annoyances, by reducing production defects, or by launching new features.
Great, thank you.
I see one other question that I want to address, which is product goal and sprint goal. Are they the same? No, they're not. So the product goal is more of a longer term goal. It may cross multiple sprints. It may even be a year, right? It's totally dependent. The sprint goal is just for one particular sprint. And it is going to be different. So for example, if your goal is, let's say that your product goal is to, let's say, I'll think of an example. You have a website and your product goal is to reach 1 million sales by such and such a date, right? Your sprint goal may be to redesign the checkout process, right? To remove a step from the checkout process. That's going to be a step towards your overall goal, but it's not the same as your overall product goal. Does that make sense? Okay. And then I'm going to answer one more, and then I'll go on to my next characteristic. Is it possible to have more than one product goal? So the answer to that is you should not have more than one product goal at a time. And the reason for that is if you have multiple product goals, you're reducing your ability to focus, right? Just like we don't want to be working on lots of different things at the same time. In the same way, you want to have one goal at a time. If you have multiple goals, you're scattering your focus. So it's important to have just one. Now, that being said, the team, if they fulfill their goal, they would certainly change to another goal, or they can abandon a goal and decide that's not something we want to focus on. And at that point, the product owner would select a new goal for the team. So it's not that your goals can't change. They can absolutely change, just like your goals in life can change. But you should only have one goal in the product backlog at a time, because that product goal is so important for improving the ability of the team to focus.
Great,
okay. Thanks,
Mary.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to go on to the next characteristic of a great product owner. And I'm tying this back to the different, I'm going to call them levels of product ownership, or different types of product owners. And some of the best product owners are really entrepreneurs. Product owners that have complete responsibility over decisions for both the business and IT strategy. The reason I selected this as a characteristic of a great product owner is because these product owners are responsible for not just business decisions, but what are the IT strategy decisions that can help us get there. So having that complete authority over that, making sure that all of the things that are supporting that product are all in alignment with the product goal. So if our goal is to reach 1 million sales, we need to have IT strategy decisions that are made that support that product goal. If our goal is to improve the auto adjudication rate, we need to have IT strategy decisions that are made that support that product goal. So having that authority to make decisions, not just over new features, but also what are the strategic decisions we need to make from a technical standpoint to get us there, would be very helpful for product owners. Okay, I had a couple more questions come in that I'm going to go ahead and answer. One person has need help understanding the product roadmap and product backlog. So we're going to talk in a minute about the product roadmap. But I want to go ahead and address this particular question because to making sure that you're getting the most value out of our later subsequent discussions. So the product backlog is contains a list of product backlog items that the team will work on. A roadmap can be considered a visualization of some of the key things in the product backlog. So for example, if your product is a website and you have on your product backlog potentially redesigning the checkout process, and you have other things that have to do with redesigning the product details pages, you may have 5 or 10 different product backlog items that have to do with each one of those topics. Your roadmap just visualizes that, right? We're going to be working on the checkout process for the next 2 or 3 months. We're going to be working on the product details page for the 2 or 3 months after that. That being said, the product roadmap is a forecast, right? And like tomorrow's weather, it could change. It's our currently best guess in terms of when are we going to get there, but is not set in stone because we do use Scrum and other Agile frameworks in complex environments where less is known. Where less is known than unknown, right? That's hard to not get that backwards. So we need to have that flexibility. As more information is learned, we do change our goals, we do change our direction, and we may change our roadmap as well. So I want to make sure that that is clear. But in short, the product roadmap is a visualization of what's in our product backlog. What are we going to work on next? And it's a great tool for communicating with stakeholders. I do have an article on rebelscrum.site, which has links to a few roadmap templates that you may be interested in. So I recommend you go out to rebelscrum.site, click on blog, and then scroll down to see roadmap templates. Okay. All right, and I'll do one more before we go on to our next characteristic. I had a question that came in: product goal and OKR, how are they connected? So OKRs are, I'm gonna make people faint here, but I'm gonna just very much simplify that. For those of you who are not aware, OKR is a way of writing goals, and it's a complementary practice. It's something that many organizations use outside of Scrum. They use it for their organizational goals. So an OKR can be used as a product goal. You can also, some organizations put their OKRs as epics in their product backlog. So however you want to use the OKR, it's fine if you want to use that format for writing your product goal, or you can include your organizational goals as epics in your product backlog. However you want to do that, both of those options are fine. Okay. All right. I am going to go on to our next characteristic of a great product owner. And we're going to talk, acts decisively. So there's nothing worse than you're in the sprint and the developers have a clarifying question about one of the product backlog items that is currently being worked, and the product owner doesn't respond in a timely manner, or responds in such a manner that the team is not even able to deliver that done increment by the end of the sprint. So it's really important that product owners be able to make decisions, right? It's a tough role. It's a tough accountability to play that, to fill. And the product owner needs to be able to make those decisions in a timely manner. That's why, going back to the different levels of product ownership, that entrepreneur is such a great option, because they have the full authority to make all decisions related to the business strategy, the IT strategy for the product. That includes, or that authority enables them to make these sorts of timely decisions. It's really difficult when you have clarifying questions for the product owner and they're not able to answer those questions in a timely manner. So acts decisively, is able to make the tough calls in a timely manner, so they're not slowing down the work of the Scrum team by making themselves into a roadblock. So acts decisively, is able to make the tough calls and has the authority to make the tough calls so that the Scrum team can continue to provide value. The way I think of this is a ship without a rudder doesn't go anywhere, right? It's better to go in any direction than to just sit there. So acting decisively, making sure that decisions are made. Now, this doesn't mean that they make decisions in a vacuum. They need to consult the developers if they may need to, consult the stakeholders, but make those decisions and move forward without undue delay. there's a difference between, I would say, impulsive and not being able to make a decision. So being decisive without being impulsive is part of being a great product owner. So I'm going to go over to the questions and just see if there's a couple. Oh, can I repeat where I could find the roadmap templates? I will ping you out a link to the blog at rebelscrum.site at the end of this session. Okay. The next is collaborates well with developers. So product owners are responsible for the content and ordering of the product backlog, but developers are closest to the work and therefore have a lot of great ideas in terms of what might add value to the product. In addition, developers are responsible for estimating or for sizing items in the product backlog. So it's really important that the product owner be able to collaborate well with them. So for example, imagine that the product owner is responsible for a product to build a new house, right? The product owner is responsible for identifying what items should be on the product backlog. That's not something that most individuals could do without help from the development team. So the product owner would need to be able to collaborate well with those developers to make sure that they have all the right items and that they're ordered correctly on that product backlog. You don't want the product owner to be saying things like, build me a house, right, in 1 week, in one sprint, right? The product owner needs to be able to work well with the product owners to make sure that each item on the product backlog is sized so it can be delivered within one sprint. And each item on the product backlog delivers a unit of value, which makes sense. So being able to collaborate well with developers, being able to collaborate well with stakeholders is something that's really important to a great product owner. Okay. Okay, so I do have a couple of questions. If you are suddenly thrown into the role of a product owner or brought onto the team midway through product development, what recommendations do you have for thriving in this new role? What should you do first? Previous product owner is not available. So my recommendation is to work closely with the developers that are on your Scrum team and make sure that you're learning from them. Learn from them what's been done previously, what's worked previously for the team, what features brought the most value to the team or to the customers in the past. So my best advice to you is start with the developers. They have been on the product for a long time, or at least longer than you, right? And they're going to have some important context to share with you. The other bit of advice I would have to you is to reach out to your stakeholders and learn from them. What are the things that have happened in the past that have been helpful? What are things that have happened in the past that have not been helpful? So that would be my advice to a new product owner. And then also, of course, right, familiarize yourself with the product backlog, familiarize yourself with the product goal, and make sure that you're taking a look at the metrics that have been identified for your product to date, and making sure that those metrics make sense, that they're actually measuring things that are useful to your product, and evaluating, are those metrics improving or are those metrics declining? That would be my advice, probably in that order, actually. Okay. Okay, so there's one other question I just want to get to before I go to the next characteristic, which is sprint goals. What if different developers have different tasks to do in the same sprint that are not described in one goal? So as a reminder, right, the sprint goal is something that's just for a particular sprint. And the product goal is kind of a higher level goal that may cross multiple sprints. In a specific sprint, if there are product backlog items that may be selected for the sprint that are not in alignment with the particular sprint goal. So if let me kind of take a step back, not every product item that was selected for the sprint will contribute to the sprint goal. For example, if your sprint goal is to update the checkout process, you may still need to fix a couple of production defects that may not be related to that checkout process. So it is okay for the sprint goal to not describe every single selected product backlog item for the sprint. The sprint goal instead should focus on what's the most important thing that we do this sprint. Why are we doing the sprint? It's not meant to be exclusionary in the sense of it doesn't have to include every single product backlog item. You don't have to remove product backlog items from the sprint just because they aren't incorporated to the sprint goal. Just identify a sprint goal that describes what's the main purpose of the sprint. It doesn't have to include every single product backlog item for the sprint. Okay. All right, I'm going to move on to the next characteristic of a great product owner, which is great at stakeholder management, right? It can be awkward standing in the limelight of the product owner accountability. But great product owners are great at stakeholder management. And stakeholder management isn't just doing a great sprint review. It's also reaching out to them outside of that sprint review, engaging them, talking to them about what's next in the product backlog, getting their input about what's next in the product backlog, and incorporating their input into the product backlog. So great product owners are great at stakeholder management. That includes a lot of things, right? It can include a weekly meeting with stakeholders. It may be communications. What that includes and what steps are taken really are very context specific and are specific to your environment, to your organization, to your needs of your stakeholders. But great product owners make sure that they're giving their stakeholders what they need and what is most valuable for them. Also without sacrificing, this is why this is hard, right? You know, you could do stakeholder engagement forever. So you need to make sure that you're balancing the time that you're spending on stakeholder management with the time making sure that the product backlog is ordered appropriately and that it's describes what the team will do next. But great product owners strike this balance and are able to work together well with their stakeholders and are still able to maintain accountability for the content and ordering of the product backlog. It's not easy. It's not easy to make sure that you're engaging their stakeholders, kind of meeting them where they're at, having those meetings with them, sending out the communications that are necessary, while also remaining accountable for the product backlog. But that's why it's something that's described as great product owners are great at stakeholder management and can work with them and meet them where they're at. Okay, I will check a couple of new questions. Is it necessary to have a sprint review demo every sprint release? So I'm gonna update the terminology here, and I'm gonna restate your question. So every sprint, you should have a sprint review. And at the sprint review, the purpose of that is to inspect the increment and collaborate on what to do next. It is necessary to have a sprint review every sprint. However, it's not necessary to release to production every sprint. The product owner decides when to release. What is necessary is to have a done usable product that's available every release, but it doesn't, or every sprint, but it doesn't have to be released to production. Okay. All right. So I think I will move on to the next characteristic of a great product owner, which is creates a reliable forecast. So somebody asked me a little bit earlier, what's the difference between a product backlog and a forecast? The forecast is, I think of it as the visualization of the product backlog, but it also includes or may include optionally information about when are we going to deliver that thing. So new product owners or those who do not yet have a steady pace of delivery may not include detailed like dates, right? They may just have now, next, later. But however you forecast, whether it be burnups or a roadmap or whatever that you do, it needs to be reliable. So generally speaking, for newer Scrum teams, for newer product teams, I recommend sort of a now, next, later approach. Here's what we're working on now, here's what we're going to work on next, and here's what we're going to be working on later. Because it's important to not diminish the trust of your stakeholders by promising dates if you don't know for sure when you're going to deliver those. So I'd say less is more. But however you forecast, it does need to be reliable. So I've got this cartoon out there. I estimate that we'll deliver that thing by 9/19/2022, and the stakeholder saying that was yesterday, right? That's not a very believable forecast because you didn't deliver that thing, at least in this cartoon. But however you forecast, making sure that it's reliable, that it's building trust with the stakeholders by not continually promising things that are not delivered. So it's understandable that the forecast changes, and you should have the ability to change, but there's also a balance, right? If you're delivering a forecast to your stakeholders that's completely unbelievable, and that's not helpful. So finding a way to forecast in a reliable way that provides information that's helpful to your stakeholders, but doesn't overpromise stakeholders. It is an art. So I will ping that link over. I'll grab the link to the blog in just a moment here, and I'll ping that out to you. There's some great forecast templates that you can use available at rebelscrum.org. Here we go. Are you recommending placing dates on the forecast is a question I got. Not necessarily. It depends on your context. If your team has a steady pace and you do know, and you do have the data to forecast dates, you can, but you don't have to. That's just sort of a cartoon. However you forecast, it does need to be reliable. So I do recommend, if you don't have a steady pace, you don't have a lot of history, I'd stick with just a now, next, later approach. But whatever you do does need to be reliable. That's what I'm trying to say here. Okay, so I'm going to grab the link to the blog, which you can find some great templates for forecasting if you would like to do so. So I'm going to send that out now. Lindsay, I'm actually pinging it to you if you want to send that out. Okay. Okay. Oops. Okay.
I will grab it. You can keep talking.
Okay, thank you.
That did not work.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to take a look at a couple other questions since we do have just a moment, and then we'll do a bit of a poll at the end here. All right, so do product owners ever build their Scrum teams? Do they pick members of the Scrum team? So that question is an interesting question. I prefer to have the Scrum team self-organize and for the developers to work together with the product owner and the Scrum Master to determine if they have the right resources available to them would be a better approach. Okay. Okay, I'm just paying through some of these questions. Let's see. Okay. What is the role of a product owner in the sprint review? So the sprint review is the second to last event in the sprint. This purpose of this event is to inspect the increment and adapt the product backlog. So the Scrum Guide does not tell you what the agenda for the sprint review should be. It doesn't tell you who needs to speak at that sprint review, and it doesn't tell you exactly how to have that sprint review. Rather, it tells you what you need to accomplish at the sprint review. So typically, the product owner may facilitate the event, but it's not required. So I know that some of the greatest product owners I've worked with generally do sort of MC that event or facilitate it, but they're not speaking the entire time. So the exact role of the product owner in the sprint review is really up to you. As long as you're meeting the purpose of the event, that is all you need to do. But you're exactly who's speaking and who's presenting this or who's demonstrating the increment, that's really up to the team. Okay, so what I'd like to do next, Lindsay, is if we could, let's do a poll, right? So I've gone through and talked about what are some of the characteristics of a great product owner from my perspective, but I want to ask each of you, what do you think? What do you think of all of these items that I've put together? What do you think is the most important? So Lindsay has opened up a poll. I'd like to ask you all for your input. And while you're voting, I will spin through a couple more of these questions. Let's see. Okay, so then one question came in, a lot of questions coming in about the forecast. So this question says, should the forecast be for next month, next quarter? How should it be time framed? I got to tell you, that's really up to you, whatever you think would be most useful to your customers. Or as I said earlier, you don't even have to put a time frame. You can simply do now, next, later. You can do a burn up that doesn't have dates at all, but rather just shows how fast are we churning through the currently open product backlog items related to the specific goal. You don't have to promise dates at all. And in terms of the time frame that you use, it's really up to you in terms of use your best judgment, whatever would be most helpful to your customer. I find that if I'm working towards a product goal, a specific time box product goal, then I might want to have that as part of the dates that are available on my roadmap. So there's really no right answer to this. I would say use your best judgment in terms of whether you want to provide dates at all, and then what that time frame should be. Okay. All right, and let's do one more before we go to the poll answers. Let's see. Please describe how testing works in Scrum. What are the testing stages in Scrum, and which stakeholders do it? So testing is usually something that's associated with software development, and every Scrum team should consist of a cross-functional, which means that developers and testers may be on the may all be part of the development team, or you may have individuals that do both. But testing should be done within the sprint, which means that it should be performed by the developers on the Scrum team as part of the sprint. In terms of what are the testing stages, Scrum doesn't describe different testing phases. It just expects that you're delivering a done usable increment by the end of the sprint, which implies that you will be doing testing and development if you have a software product within the sprint. Okay, let's go ahead and, do you think it's ready to close the poll, Lindsay?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Where did it go? Hang on one moment. Oh, there it is. It jumped screens on me. There we go.
All right, well, it looks like it's pretty evenly distributed, actually. So the most popular one was collaborates well with developers. Excellent choice. Collaborating well with your developers is really important, particularly for newer Scrum Masters. Being able to develop that relationship with developers is really important to making sure that that product backlog is transparent and shows what developers will work on next, and supporting incremental delivery. And then clearly articulates goals was our next most popular selection, but overall it was pretty evenly distributed. Interestingly, creates a reliable forecast was the lowest voted item, which I do think is interesting, because a lot of newer product owners feel a lot of pressure to create that forecast. But really the most important thing is to make sure that that product backlog is up to date. It is supporting incremental delivery and shows what the Scrum team will work on next. So it's transparent. So fantastic. All right. So I think without further ado, I'm going to ask a question, and this is for you all in the chat. What other characteristics do you think or have you seen in great product owners? So if you want to share your thoughts in the chat, that would be fantastic. Just give you a couple minutes. You really only have 1 minute, I think, for this.
Oh,
in the Q&A,
hey,
also fine.
hang on 1 second. I fixed the permissions. Sorry, for some reason the permissions had chat turned off.
That's okay.
So,
there we go. Coming through. Okay. We've got asking for a clear scope, humility. Yeah, I did think about humility too as part of humility. Means to me the ability to accept feedback, right? Openness to other people's ideas. I agree. Completely important for great product owners. Flexibility of mind, right? Being open to new ideas. Again, creativity, handles uncertainty. These are great. Improving team morale. Yep. By making sure, yes, that I agree. Time management. Yeah, that's really important, especially if you're a product owner for a product that has more than one Scrum team, right? Time management is really important. Being able to know what to delegate, right? And what to work on. Being adaptable, great communication skills. Got another for humility, flexibility, communicators, empathy, approachable. Oh yeah, absolutely. Taking ownership, knowing when to say no. These are great. Curiosity, team engagement, flexible, trust, right? Making sure that they're living the Scrum values, right? I didn't list that one, but that is important that everyone on the Scrum team use those Scrum values to be able to create a sense of trust between the stakeholders, right? Between the product owner and the developer. We've got highly organized, clear goal setter, proper documentation. Okay, fantastic. Understanding that technical debt must be addressed. That's a good one. All right. So we are at the time box. So I am going to close that, but I got to tell you, thank you so much for providing your input. And this actually concludes our webinar for today. But I encourage you to reach out to me at mary@rebelscrum.site. I've also got my website here on display, rebelscrum.site. You can take a look at my blog. I recommend that you sign up. I do send out a weekly email. We also have upcoming classes, including the Professional Scrum Product Owner class, which I recommend that you also sign up for. And thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to hearing from each and every one of you.
Thank you so much, Mary, for this great session here. And just a reminder for everybody who's also on the Scrum.org website, there is a product owner learning path. So please feel free to check that out. Lots of free resources similar to this webinar on that learning path. And thank you all for joining today. There is one more fun question I want to add, Mary, as people are logging off, but somebody asked, so Rebel Scrum, what's the best Star Wars episode?
I definitely think Empire Strikes Back is the best. No questions. Any of the original movies.
Good choice. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day or evening. Bye. Scrum on.